I'm John McKee, editor of Messianic Apologetics, messianicapologetics.net. And I would like to welcome you to this episode of Messianic Insider, your theology and news roundup for January the 14th, 2026. We are now back. We've returned from the IAMCS 2026 Rabbis Conference. I'm sure many of you followed the day-to-day McKee moment log entries and tried to keep you up to date as best as I could with everything which took place. We returned on Monday afternoon. Yesterday, I had many things to get caught up on. And now today, of course, we are able to return with Messianic Insider. And we've got a lot to get caught up on as we get back into theology and news. All right, so before we get started, just a few brief housekeeping items. If you have not already, please do go to the Messianic Apologetics website. And here in the right-hand column, you see blog notifications. Be automatically notified by email when Messianic Apologetics is updated. Put your email address in there, and you'll be asked to confirm. So whenever we add something new or reintroduce something from our archives, you should receive an automatic notification. That is different from our email update list, which you can subscribe by clicking on the envelope icon in the upper right-hand corner here. That's via Constant Contact. So you'll get an update. You subscribe to that. You'll get an update when we, for example, announce today's episode of Messianic Insider. Now, before we get into our teaching and then later the news roundup, some of you all have noticed this here in the upper right-hand corner. See Messianic Apologetics, messianicapologetics.net, and then in yellow gold lettering, messianic.faith. What is that? What is messianic.faith? That is not there simply for show. It's not there for artistic purposes. This past fall, we did acquire the domain messianic.faith, and it simply forwards to messianicapologetics.net. I have been looking for a reason to use Messianic messianic.faith for a while. And when we were at the Rabbis Conference, we were at the different events we went to, I ran out of business cards. And so guess what I needed to do? I needed to very quickly tell people, how do you get to our website? And messianic.faith. Because, well, how do I spell messianicapologetics.net? What do I do here? What do I do there? And it was pretty clear that people can remember messianic.faith. So it's not a new website. It's just an address we have, which forwards to it. So if you can't remember messianicapologetics.net, or you want to give out our website, our ministry to other people, go to messianic.faith. That will definitely work. Okay, so that concludes some of our little announcements. Yeah, messianic.faith. There you go. And, like a lot of websites, we've got, messianicapologetics.net, .org, .blog. This is the same thing. All right, so let's now jump into our theology roundup. And for today, although tomorrow we're going to be getting into a very hot topic, I'll tell you what it is in just a few moments. But I do want to just briefly review what we went to at the IAMCS 2026 Rabbis Conference. You all doubtlessly saw my day-to-day log. certainly there were things which took place there. I am holding back on. We're not going to talk about it. I'll be reflecting on it over the coming weeks and months because when you go to a leadership conference, there are times when you talk shop and you talk about some of the things going on in the Messianic community, the greater Jewish community, religious sphere of influence, which are somewhat confidential. But there are a lot of things there, which, of course, we can talk about because one of the main reasons why many of the rabbis, congregational leaders, etc., go there is to be encouraged. Uh, there are a lot of things which took place at the Rabbis Conference. This was my seventh one, well, which were kind of like a pep rally, as it were. So I received a huge amount of input from the Rabbis Conference. Unlike previous years, many people knew exactly who I was. And the reason they knew who I was because of Messianic Insider, going 5 times a week this past year. And very much appreciated people coming up to me. Oh, I listen to you every day. I can't wait for you to get home and resume. That meant a great deal. And believe me, over the next few days, I'm going to have to get back into the routine of collecting news stories, thinking about what we're going to be talking about in the next year, what hot topics, and other things I believe the Lord has in store for us. Many of you who were there came up to me and let me know that you rely on this live stream, this podcast for the news. And some of the news which I run into passively, it's not difficult to be found. But of course, if you're just relying on Fox News or even Newsmax, you might not always find it. And so that was, of course, very important to know about. It's one thing to just know instinctively that you're performing the service. Is another thing to have some people say, "Yeah, I watch you and I listen to you, and I really appreciate that you collect news because I wouldn't be able to find it." Uh, One of the things which I remember hearing about at the Rabbis Conference, and mind you, there were different presentations, different 10-minute talks on all kinds of things. And I do save the notes, I do save the information because some of the 10-minute talks I get ideas about for future teachings, future points to be made, frequently asked questions, entries, etc. I remembered distinctively hearing a teaching about new manna in terms of Bible teaching. And to be honest, that's really not so much my thing. I mean, I understand that there can be new developments in theology and spirituality. But the idea of new manna, I mean, yes, it is influenced by a lot of, charismatica and everything. The Holy Scriptures are consistent. They're relevant for any generation, and we have a responsibility to make it relevant. But the scriptures remain consistent. One of the things, however, which does kind of have a new manna aura to it, is the news and knowing what is happening in the world. So while you turn to Holy Scripture and you have to follow that rule of try to interpret a text for its original audience first and then deduce principles for today, the news cycle, however, changes from day to day. Many of you all remember that not this past, but the previous Saturday morning, we all woke up for Shabbat, and what had happened? The U.S. had gone into Venezuela, and we had apprehended Nicolas Maduro and his wife. And we'd been following the Venezuelan situation for a while. So the news cycle, of course, changes from day to day, and that is sort of a new manna thing. And right now, as we're getting ready to get into our news roundup, overwhelmingly, although not exclusively, but overwhelmingly, the stories we're going to be going into pertain to the situation in Iran right now and all of the building anticipation of some kind of action against the Iranian regime. So that is, of course, something which we're following. We are expecting there to be some kind of major activity in the not too distant future. We don't want to be presumptuous, but we do think something is getting ready to happen. Now, theologically, what are we going to discuss throughout 2026? We don't want to micromanage the next 12 months of calendar year 2026. There is a list I keep of potential topics to be addressed. Some of these topics include things which I believe are important. Other topics come from things you suggest. And I do remember interacting with someone at the conference. Hey, can you talk about this? And they were very appreciative when I said, we already have an open file on it. Excellent. So I really appreciate that kind of dialogue. Not, hey, you need to talk about this, or I don't like it when you talk about that. No, it was constructive and it was very encouraging. There are some plans, and we're going to get into this in the news roundup in just a moment, to immediately this very week, so Thursday and Friday, to address the issue of the synagogue of Satan, particularly as it involves the recent arson attack in Jackson, Mississippi. We just added, this was yesterday, although it had been in a draft mode for a while, this frequently asked question entry, Synagogue of Satan, FAQ. It had been on the FAQ tab, volume 2 in PDF for a while, but this is the text version. So you can go right to messianicapologetics.net, access it now. We're going to be going through this on Thursday and Friday. Okay. And then, haven't figured out the day-to-day of it yet, but we've got 2 multi-part series planned for resuming Messianic Insider. One, we'll be going through Romans 9, 10, and 11 from the Romans for the Practical Messianic Commentary, which just got updated within the past month and a half or so for 2025. So of course, there's a lot of discussion about replacement theology and all Israel will be saved. So it's useful for us to go through that. That's going to be a somewhat positive issue. Later, we're going to be going through, and we did this a number of years ago, although I think it was 2020. So it'd be useful to go through it again now. We're going to be going through my lengthy article, Approaching One Law Controversies, Sorting Through the Legalism. Because as I said, as we closed up 2025, the whole issue of one law and various Torah passages, what it means, what it doesn't mean, it has very quickly become for the Messianic community, the Messianic sphere of influence, what 6 days means or does not mean for a great deal of Christianity, meaning that simplistic approaches will no longer suffice. We have to look and see what the terminology, one law or one statute means in the actual passages where it is used. And there are people on both sides of the controversy who are guilty, I'm sorry, of just rushing through this and, well, what does it mean here? And they'll say, well, you have to keep scripture in context. Okay, well, what does one law or one statute mean in the passages where it appears? And so that's not going to be so positive, because what it means is that we're going to find out we have been sorted with, I'll just leave it at that, by a number of people on both the side in favor and the side against. But that's something you can be looking ahead to after we finish Romans 9, 10, and 11. And to be sure, what is the cycle going to determine for us? Because we want to be able to easily respond to matters out there in the world of ideas, changing spirituals, changing theology, theological dimensions in our Messianic faith community. At the same time, we want to be aware of what's going on in the world. And while our ministry certainly has a lot of resources and a lot of publications which deal with the Messianic lifestyle, things like Torah observance, etc., avoiding legalism, and we're updating some things as we see necessary. For my own personal future studies, I'm going to be focusing more on eschatology, current events, preventing apostasy, things which involve the modern issues, which, you go to an IMCS Rabbis Conference, an event like that, there are some of the leaders and teachers there who doubtlessly discussed it. Others are ambivalent, ambiguous, or not so sure what to do about it. And so we're looking ahead to 2026, and we'll see what the cycle determines. Okay, so that's what I wanted to do today as we get back into Messianic Insider tomorrow. And this will probably be a two-parter, Thursday and Friday. We're going to talk about the synagogue of Satan. It's in Revelation chapters 2 and then 3. So just be thinking ahead for that. All right, so let's now switch over to our news roundup. And we do have a lot of things to get caught up on here as we just enter back into the news cycle. Because the news cycle, of course, we do the news roundup after the theology roundup because the news cycle is ever changing. And the dominant issue, of course, right now is what is happening in the Middle East, specifically with Iran, with the ongoing revolt against the regime by the Iranian people. Is it a revolution? Is the U.S. going to get involved? Is Israel going to get involved? What about some of the other players, Russia, China, etc.? Of course, we also have other things which are taking place in the world and here on the American home front. Number one, be praying for peace. Israel, Gaza, the Middle East definitely applies now. Iran. Number two, be praying for peace in Russia, Ukraine. We don't have so much on that today. And of course, number three, reason and sanity to prevail here on the American home front. So all the news stories I'm about to go through, these will be available for you to look at later today when this episode is archived at messianicapologetics.net, or if it is easier for you to remember, messianic.faith. Okay, I had to fix the banner here. Apparently on StreamYard, it had been set up to only appear for 10 seconds. That shouldn't be an issue now. All right. So our first news story. This is from January the 13th, yesterday, Visegrad 24. Trump sends message to Iranian protesters. Iranian patriots keep protesting. Take over your institutions. Save the names of the killers and abusers. I have canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. Help is on its way. MIGA, that's Make Iran Great Again. So, of course, a lot of people, what does Trump mean? Help is on its way. And while we are not privy to all of the activities of the U.S. government regarding potential regime change in Iran, it can range anywhere from cyber attacks against the Iranian regime, economic sanctions, perhaps just moving our military assets closer to Iran, whether they are Air Force, Army, Navy, putting maximum pressure on the Iranian regime in the greater global community, threatening tariffs of those who do business with Iran and do business with the U.S. What does Trump mean? Help is on its way. But one of the things I think we can be assured of is, unlike some of the previous U.S. administrations, the Trump administration is not going to let this opportunity go to waste. We've seen what's happened since the Iranian Revolution of 1979 during the Carter years. And of course, removing this Islamo-fascist regime and seeing it replaced with a more moderate, whether it's led by the Crown Prince in exile or not regime, which is democratic and favorable to the West, would significantly change not only the Middle East, but perhaps even the world, as the current Iranian regime is frequently used by Western adversaries, Russia, China, North Korea, etc., to do things which we don't like, and which create instability and create a huge number of problems. All right, so here we have the problem, one of the recent problems on the American home front. This is reposted by Joel Berry, of course, part of the Babylon Bee, from the channel Jews Fight Back. Meet the scumbag who burned the biggest synagogue in Mississippi. Stephen Spencer Pittman, 19, Madison, Mississippi. At 3:00 a.m., January 10th, 2026, Pittman drove to Beth Israel Congregation in Jackson, the largest and most historic synagogue in the state. He smashed his way in with an axe. He poured gasoline across the lobby and set it ablaze. Torah scrolls were incinerated. Okay, this is not the first time this kind of an action has occurred in a synagogue in the U.S. or in the American South, but here, Pittman called the shul the synagogue of Satan and bragged about torching it to his father, who turned him into the FBI. Go down here. He's facing up to 20 years in prison, and he deserves every single one. That's from Jews Fight Back. And as I commented, my great-grandfather, Bishop Marvin Franklin of the Methodist Church, he was bishop of the state of Mississippi in the 1940s. You can go look him up. He's originally from North Georgia, but he was ecumenical in the sense that he had dialogue with, of course, other churches. This Beth Israel Synagogue, the only real synagogue in Jackson, Mississippi, he had the rabbi speak at his funeral. So this act of arson hits a little close to home for us. Not that it wouldn't happen if it were here in Dallas or other places, but this is something which people are definitely going to be examining. What was the cause of this kid committing the act of arson? Synagogue of Satan. Where did he get this from? There are going to be a lot of questions which rightfully are going to be asked. Okay, this is from Newsmax yesterday, the 13th of January. I'm sorry, the New York Post. There's another one from Newsmax. I got them mixed up. Breaking: former President Bill Clinton and ex-Secretary of State Hillary Clinton skipped their depositions before the House Oversight Committee regarding the late pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, forcing the panel's chairman to weigh bringing contempt of Congress proceedings. So, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton expected to testify before the House. They didn't do so. And what's going to come of this? Not good. Okay, our next story. This is pretty sad. Some of you all know this by now. This is the first one which came across my feed from the New York Post yesterday. Conservative pundit and Dilbert creator Scott Adams dead at 68. Now, I haven't followed Dilbert or Scott Adams for a really long time, but I do know that in Scott Adams' final days, he was sorting through whether or not he should commit his life to Christ and become a believer. Now, whether you like or dislike Scott Adams, or you think that Scott Adams was hedging his bets about religion, there are sincerely many people who come to faith in the Lord in their final days when they know they need to make their peace with God or their creator, whatever that is. And in the Messianic community, we have certainly witnessed many Jewish people finally think about, well, maybe Yeshua is the Messiah in their final days. And it is certainly my hope and prayer, because it was reported that Scott Adams gave his life to the Lord in his final moments. I pray that it was sincere, and I pray that we will see him in the kingdom. But of course, why do we have to wait until our final days in order to give our lives over to the Lord, when we can contribute so much to the purposes of his kingdom and the purposes of his people now? All right, our next story, and this is from Jack Posobiec from his feed on X. There's a 50-second clip here. Ms. Rachel responds to backlash over her teaching LGBT pride to children by claiming it is what Jesus wanted. And Jack Posobiec's comment is, warned y'all about Miss Rachel. Now she's doing events with Mom Donnie. So now I do not have children because I'm not married, but I do have a nephew who I was able to visit with in our recent excursion. And I can tell you, he was watching Miss Rachel for a while. And then, of course, the whole Gaza war took place. She took a hardline stance with the Palestinians, hardline stance that this was a genocide committed by the state of Israel. Very quickly, he stopped watching Miss Rachel. And instead, my sister Maggie made sure that he was watching some of the things I grew up on, old archived back episodes of what? Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And, Miss Rachel, pro-Palestinian, pro-Gaza. And that's not to say that we don't want peace, Israel and Gaza. We do. But doing events with Mayor Mamdani in New York, saying that Jesus wants there to be LGBTQ types of things. Not that we're not supposed to love our neighbor. We are, but that does not mean we're supposed to accept what they're doing. But yeah, kids shows are not what they used to be, not from when I was growing up. So I thought that was appropriate to pass along to you. All right, we got a lot to talk about in terms of the Iranian situation. So some of you all might want to go back and look at some of these links later. Here, Visegrad 24. This is posted yesterday morning, 8:13 a.m. Why aren't these pictures from Iran all over the front pages of mainstream media outlets? And here, of course, we see some of the fatalities of those who have protested against the regime. Okay, this was something I do think was important to pass on because it does generate a huge amount of speculation. This is from the New York Post yesterday, the 13th of January. Hegseth, that's Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War or Defense, depending on your perspective. Elon Musk vow to unleash tech innovation at Pentagon and make Star Trek real. And of course, there you see Pete Hegseth giving the Vulcan salute. Pete Hegseth flashed a Vulcan salute on January the 12th as he joined Elon Musk at SpaceX headquarters, where the war secretary touted the Pentagon's wartime approach to unleashing technological innovation. Now, there's, of course, a lot of talk about when U.S. Special Forces were sent to capture Nicolas Maduro, some of the technology used to incapacitate his guards and what have you. How much of it is really closer to Star Trek than closer to, say, the Vietnam War, World War II, is hard to tell. Is there advanced military technology out there which would cause many people to be very alarmed? I would think so. But here you've got a mainstream media source claiming that we're going to possibly start seeing things which are more and more like Star Trek. We'll see. And with that in mind, some of you all are probably aware that there's a new Star Trek series coming out, Starfleet Academy. It starts tomorrow. Yes, it's probably very woke and progressive, but hey, we still have to stay up to date with what's going on in society. So I'll watch it. And I'll watch it just because the Doctor from Voyager is supposed to be in the series, because the Doctor in Voyager was a hologram, so he can't die. So that'll be interesting to see. I don't get a chance to watch TV that much, just to let you know. But there are some shows I like. All right, here is a post from yesterday, Visegrad 24, 2:50 a.m. But this is important to keep note of, and this is not the only source which picked this up. German Chancellor Merz. The Iranian regime is close to collapse. These are its final days or weeks. We are witnessing the last days or weeks of this regime. Now, what makes this important, because it's from the German Chancellor, is that historically, since the Second World War, the Federal Republic of Germany tends to be very careful and very conservative, very restrained even with what it says regarding international affairs. And we know why. It's from the fallout of the Second World War. Uh, Many of the same thoughts and opinions as you see in other European countries, the United Kingdom, France, etc., regarding the Middle East peace process are shared by those in Germany. But Germany's got to be restrained because of the fallout from the Holocaust, the Second World War. So for the German chancellor to right now claim that the Iranian regime is close to collapse, that is huge, rather than just we're monitoring the situation and we're going to wait and see what happens. That's huge. It means that they are aware and others are aware that we are most probably in the coming weeks going to see the Islamic Republic overthrown by the people, mainly by the people, possibly with some outside help, and a new government come into power that's going to change the Middle East. And it's going to reset some things in the world as well. Okay, so here, open source intel defender. This is from yesterday, 12:18 p.m. Speaking earlier on Air Force One, President Donald J. Trump was asked what he meant by help is on its way for the protesters in Iran, stating, "You're going to find out soon," before adding, "It's a good idea for Americans to leave Iran." Now, indeed, we don't know what options the president is going to choose in terms of help is on its way, economic sanctions, threatening tariffs. Those who do business with Iran and do business with the U.S. are going to pay a heavy price, cyber attacks, or as we saw in the 12-day war, bombing from the U.S. military, strategic bombing. We wait and see. So here's one of the things the president definitely has to weigh into the equation. Open source intel yesterday afternoon. Wall Street Journal, Iran's Arab rivals across the Persian Gulf, led by Saudi Arabia, are pressing the Trump administration to avoid a strike on Tehran, despite U.S. warnings to prepare for the possibility of an attack. Okay. And of course, logically, we know what the reason is. If the U.S. goes in and they want to, U.S. decides to bomb or take out certain targets in Iran, Iran decides to fire back, they're first going to fire back on their Arab rivals. They're going to fire back on Israel. They're going to fire back on U.S. assets in the Middle East. Pray for the president. He's got a lot of, difficult decisions to make in the coming days. Okay, here's an important story. There's a clip. It's from Fox News. There's a 28-second clip. President Trump, to all Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions if possible, and save the names of the killers and the abusers that are abusing you. I say save their names because they'll pay a very big price. So this is more of what we've seen. And indeed, pray for the people of Iran that they legitimately can get their country back. Because, look, prophetically, we do believe there's going to be a period of peace and security. That's in Thessalonians. We don't know how long that period is going to be. But there are things about the end time scenario, whether it involves Iran, the Arab countries, Israel, which I think we have accurate, generally speaking. But there are things which we might have upside down and backwards. But for the short term, yes, we pray for the believers in Iran. We pray for the believers in the Middle East. And we pray for the overthrow of this sadistic regime. Okay, here's an important one. This is a commentary from Visegrad 24 yesterday. Why aren't Greta and her friends already organizing a freedom flotilla to Iran? Indeed, all of those leftists who protested against the Gaza war, they protested against Israel, they're utterly silent right now with what is happening in Iran. And you would think they would jump to the support of the Iranian people who are revolting. They're rebelling against this regime, which has held them in their grasp for uh, 47 years. All right, our next story, and this includes a clip. This is from Open Source Intel, although it has been circulating all over social media. There's a 4-minute, 52-second clip here. This was at a recent debate, and here the subject of AIPAC came up and AIPAC's influence on America. And this is by Shabbos Kestenbaum. You can read this in your spare time, but basically it talks about how so let's talk about AIPAC. I don't support AIPAC largely because they're pretty ineffective. And then AIPAC as an organization is comprised exclusively of Americans, by Americans, and for Americans. You do not have to like them, but that doesn't mean they are the agent for a foreign country. Just like Indian Americans have U.S. INPAC, Armenian Americans have ANCA, Greek Americans have HALC, the Ukrainian American community has the UCCA. Americans are free to lobby as they would like. And if you want to make laws against lobbying of Americans for their government, then fine, let's discuss policy and legislation. So here it goes into basically, yes, okay, there's AIPAC, and that's an American organization which supports Israel, wants to see the U.S. Support Israel's interests and what have you. But there are other such organizations. Indian Americans have one. Greek Americans have one. Armenian Americans have, Albanian. Let me make sure I got that right. I'm sorry. Yeah, Armenian Americans have one. Greek Americans, Ukrainian Americans. Yes, there are those who support Albanian causes. We got one of them here in McKinney, Texas, actually. What about all of those others? They don't seem to get the amount of attention that AIPAC gets. So that's a very useful clip to watch, and I recommend that you look into that later. Okay, so here we have from also Open Source Intel yesterday, January the 13th, U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff secretly met over the weekend with exiled former Iranian Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi to discuss the ongoing anti-government protests in Iran, Axios reports. So yes, things are definitely in motion. We're going to change gears ever so slightly. I mentioned Newsmax earlier. This is the story I was talking about. This is from yesterday, the 13th of January. Trump to announce phase 2 of Gaza ceasefire deal. President Donald Trump is expected to announce the next phase of a Gaza ceasefire deal, pushing forward a plan aimed at sidelining Hamas terrorists and reshaping governance in the war-torn enclave, according to a report. Okay, so we do have to pay attention to what's happening there, because with that, I can guarantee you there's going to be a lot of speculation regarding end-time prophecy and the number 10 and what have you. But yeah, as much as we do pray for peace in Gaza, we do recognize realistically that in the past year or so, past several years, we've taken some giant leaps forward toward the second coming. But we'll try to keep tabs on this. Okay, still have a lot of stories to go through. From Open Source Intel, and here is a 1-minute, 56-second clip from CBS Evening News. This is from yesterday afternoon. U.S. President Donald Trump said that the United States will take very strong action in Iran if the regime starts hanging protesters. And we're going to be discussing this in just a moment with someone who's getting a lot of attention on social media. Okay, here is a story not too surprising. Open Source Intel Defender. This is from yesterday afternoon, 3:34 p.m. The Israel Defense Force has been raised to a particularly high security alert within the last few hours, as security assessments suggest that President Donald J. Trump has decided to intervene in the ongoing anti-government protest in Iran. The only question now is when, according to the sources who spoke to Channel 12. Okay, this is the kind of thing which, of course, can change from moment to moment, but the concern of the Israeli government is doubtless that if the U.S. uses military action against the Islamic Republic in support of the protests, the people of Iran, what is Iran going to do in response? Are they going to, if fire missiles on Israel, U.S. Assets in the region? So that's not a huge surprise that the Israeli government is on a high alert. Okay, here's something which I'm sure many of you all have seen by now. This is one of the protesters in Iran, Erfan Soltani, 26. This was posted yesterday, 3:29 p.m., who was arrested on January the 8th, is set to become the first, in parentheses, this round, Iranian protester sentenced to hanging, with the execution scheduled for tomorrow, January the 14th. Before going live, as far as I know, he is still alive. More than 10,800 detained protesters in Iran now face the risk of being charged with waging war against Allah, an offense that can carry the death penalty by hanging. So, yeah, you start seeing some of the protesters against the Iranian regime face public execution. What's the U.S. going to do? Are we going to permit this to occur? So tensions are building, but that's just very sad. Somebody who's 26 years old. Open source intel yesterday, 3:43 p.m. Reuters, Prime Minister Netanyahu's security cabinet is being briefed on the prospects of regime collapse in Iran and possible U.S. intervention. And why do we note all of these different stories? Because what we're trying to do, and we've done this with a number of situations, especially the lead up to the 12-day war last spring, we're trying to follow the narrative of events. So it's not just, oh, the Ayatollah is gone. He's fled the country. The Ayatollah is dead, or there's whatever the drama might be. We're not waiting for some big drama to. We're trying to follow trace a series of events, because too many people, and I mean this with all the love and respect in the world, even Messianic leaders, they're going to wake up one morning and something dramatic's going to happen. And all of us are going to be like, yeah, we were following this the past few weeks, the past few months. This isn't a surprise. How it happened was a surprise, but we're not totally shocked that this took place. Like, I wasn't shocked to see that Maduro had been apprehended by U.S. special forces in Venezuela. Admittedly, it happened sooner than I thought it would, but I wasn't shocked to see it take place. And look, there is deliberate deception, yes, I'll call it that, on the part of the U.S. government, Israeli government, other governments, to get the enemy to think they're doing this when they're really doing that. I mean, that's all part of warfare. Okay, still have a lot of stories to go through. Okay, Visegrad 24, and there is a 27-second clip. This is from yesterday afternoon. Thousands of Iranian patriots took to the streets of Tehran tonight. Yeah, the pressure continues to build. Okay, now what are we seeing possibly here on the domestic front regarding this? So here, this is yesterday, open source intel defender, 5:59 p.m. Despite supporting President Trump's decision last June to bomb Iranian nuclear facilities alongside Israel, Vice President J.D. Vance is still worried the United States could be pulled deeper into a Middle East entanglement if it intervenes in the anti-regime protests in Iran. Okay, obviously, at least according to open source material, there's still some deliberation taking place on what could happen or what may not happen in terms of U.S. involvement in Iran. Some people would say the president, of course, gets the final say. Okay, I agree with that. But we don't know. All right. So what just took place in Mississippi. So here you have some commentary. This is from Joel M. Petlin on X. This is posted on January the 12th, but very useful to pass it along. Mississippi synagogue arsonist Spencer Pittman threw away college, baseball, and a promising future because someone convinced him that the synagogue of Satan had to be destroyed. How many more dangerous people are being inspired by influential anti-Semites? And of course, who's being reposted here? Our good friend Candace Owens, where she talks about how the people of Israel, the Jewish community, basically is the synagogue of Satan. Christ will win. And it does not escape our notice that both Candace Owens and this Spencer Pittman character, they're both Roman Catholics. Now, there are plenty of Roman Catholics who condemn this, but you can't say that that wasn't a huge factor. Of course, it could have been a Protestant, but a lot of these actions are committed by people who are Catholic oriented. Some of these major social media influencers, Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, they're Catholic. Now, again, there are others who are Protestant, like Tucker Carlson. He's not Catholic. He's Episcopalian. Dale Partridge is one who is Reformed. He makes some anti-Semitic remarks. Joel Webbin, he's Reformed. We've got to be very careful in our criticism, but take note of this. We've got rising anti-Semitism, and some of it is tied into these social media influencers who get people all ginned up to go and do stupid acts like this, because Spencer Pittman, promising life, not anymore. Decisions have consequences. All right, so Visegrad 24, back to the Iranian situation. This was posted 8:00 p.m. yesterday. CBS News reports that the death toll in Iran is much higher than reported, and that 12,000 to 20,000 anti-regime protesters have been murdered. Okay, that is really severe. So, yeah, the pressure is building upon the U.S. government to do something, and justifiably so. Okay, so here we see from also Visegrad 24, and there is a 29-second clip. This was posted 9:49 p.m. yesterday. A message for Trump from a young conscript soldier of the Iranian army, not the IRGC. President Trump, we, all the people in the army, are ready and waiting for you to free Iran from this tyrannical regime so we can rebuild it. And as you said, to make Iran great again. Yeah, there is considerable support from inside, not just Iranian civilians, but even the regular Iranian army to, hey, if you can have our back, we'll help make Iran great again. We'll do the right thing and see this terrible regime ended. Okay, now here's something I wanted to pass along. Some of you all know about this. It's kind of a theory in political circles. Some of you all may not be aware of it, but you're going to be aware of it now. This is from an X channel called Pentagon Pizza Watch. And here, this was posted yesterday evening, 8:14 p.m. But you see these different you see these different charts monitoring pizza orders in and around the Pentagon. So the pizza 1 mile from the Pentagon is experiencing an extreme spike in activity at 278%. Extreme Pizza 0.5 miles follows with 196%. Domino's Pizza, Pentagon closest, 1.4 miles, reports 159%. DEFCON level is 3. Now, the theory which goes along with this, and of course, this changes from day to day, and it's not an exact theory, but when you see the number of pizza orders, carry-out orders go up at these different pizza places in and around the Pentagon, and I guess by extension, you can say in and around, important places in Washington, it indicates that people are working late. They've got to call in and When they're working late, it means that something is up. That's what the whole Pentagon pizza theory is involved. The number of pizza orders goes up. People are working late. It means something big is afoot. And we saw this before we saw it during the 12-day war, and certainly saw it right before the U.S. sent in the B-2 bombers. Okay, here's a story from Fox News. Sean Hannity, in fact, reposted this. There's a clip. That's John Fetterman, the Democratic senator from Pennsylvania. Very important to watch this. Senator Fetterman says strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities shifted the Middle East and could help fuel protests that is leading to real change in Iran. So one of the things you see with Senator Fetterman, and yes, when he was elected, a lot of us expected this almost, Uncle Fester type, Uncle Fester from the Addams Family type. He has been a surprise. He's a Pennsylvania Democrat, but in terms of some of these issues regarding anti-Semitism, the Middle East, Fetterman has been a very pleasant surprise. And he's advocating that, yes, the U.S. get involved and that we take these people out, the current Iranian regime. So that's a useful clip for you to watch. All right, so everyone is going to have their opinion about what's happening in Iran. We've got our opinion. You doubtlessly are forming your opinion. Generally speaking, we look at it as a positive development for the people of Iran, for the believers, the underground Christian community, for the Middle East, and even the world. You take out this regime, which has, very close collaboration with Russia, China, North Korea, also Venezuela, the typical cast of characters. You see it replaced with possibly a constitutional monarchy, a democracy. It's common knowledge that the Iranians and the Jewish people have had a very close relationships, the Persians, the Jews, for many centuries. And the Persian culture is much more progressive, as it were, historically in the Middle East compared to some others. So a lot of us look at the restoration of what was taken in 1979 as a good thing, and it's going to stop a lot of warfare, stop a lot of terrorism, stop Hamas and Hezbollah, and see some kind of stability and even prosperity restored to the Middle East. And as the scriptures say, while they're saying peace and safety, sudden destruction. So we don't know how long that period will be. But there are going to be other people who have other opinions. And so here's one from End Time Headlines, posted yesterday, the 13th of January. Why Iran regime collapse could unleash a nightmare scenario for Israel. So this is coming from the perspective that, well, yes, it's been bad, the Islamic Republic, but what's going to come after it? Is that going to be better, or is that going to be worse? So here, the End Time headline says, could the fall of Tehran be Israel's greatest trap? As the streets of Iran burn and the cries for revolution reach a fever pitch, the halls of Jerusalem are tempered by a chilling realization. A regime change that looks like a dream on paper could quickly morph into a security nightmare that the region isn't prepared to handle. While the collapse of the Ayatollahs would remove a primary existential threat, the resulting power vacuum could unleash a wild west of rogue IRGC factions, unaccountable missile stockpiles, and chaos that ignores every border. Prophetically speaking, this could ultimately set the stage for the future Gog and Magog war of Ezekiel 38 and 39. Okay, and we want to be fair, and we want to recognize that there are going to be some people who see a possible regime change in Iran as being a destabilizing tactic, not a stabilizing tactic. Okay. And of course, we'll see what happens. And as believers, our primary responsibility is to pray for the believers and pray for peace and pray for God's presence to be there among the faithful. Okay. Okay, we got 6 more stories to go through. Okay, here is our next one. This is from Open Source Intel Defender, 11:04 p.m. yesterday, the 13th of January. Despite public saber rattling against Iran, President Donald J. Trump has sounded uncertain in private about potential military action, with some describing him as less than enthusiastic than before the bombings last June, and another calling it a coin flip whether he decides to order strikes against Iran. People close to the White House told the Washington Post. Okay, I mean, I don't doubt the fact that the president has some very difficult decisions to make in the coming days. That is to be expected. And indeed, I know that a lot of us would just like to uh, see the U.S. minimally involved. We'll take down this uh, cyber warfare. We'll make sure that this is taken care of. We don't want to have to see B2s take out huge facilities like during the 12-day war, but we will wait and see. Stress levels in Washington right now and around the world are very high. From the Jerusalem Post on X, and there is a 1 minute 30-second clip. We've got two clips, in fact, the next story as well. There will be no Iranian regime. Amir Avivi, chairman of IDSF Israel, predicts an imminent U.S.-led attack on Iran with Israeli support, saying the regime stands no chance, in collab with Israel Defense and Security Forum. Okay, that's an opinion, and indeed, that is a possibility. We saw basically that in the 12-day war in June. Okay, and here is another story, also from the Jerusalem Post. This was I think it was at the same forum, but I'm not sure. 45-second clip from yesterday evening. This is something you need to really keep in mind regarding the situation. A leaked Iranian government poll showed 92% of Iranians hate the regime, not just the president, but the supreme leader, the IRGC, and its policies at home and abroad, says Iran expert Benny Sabti of INSS Israel. You cannot be surprised. Okay, so if the people of Iran, 92%, really hate the regime that much, yes, the pressure on the U.S. and Israel to do something tangible to give the people at least a fighting chance to overthrow this government, to see some kind of democratic alternative installed, is very, very high. And with that in mind, here from Open Source Intel, posting a clip from Fox News, 20 seconds. Reza Pahlavi, he's the crown prince in exile. Here he says, we have had more casualties in the last 2 days, 4 times the number of people who were dead as a result of the 9/11 terrorist attack. 12,000 plus. That's what we get so far. It might be more. Yeah, so that's serious. And I'm not so concerned about opinions coming from Israel, opinions coming from the U.S. government. Some hesitation. Okay, we're going to get involved, and what's going to happen with the other countries out there, Russia, China, the Middle East, etc. I'm more concerned about, hey, where are all the progressive protesters who, came out in favor of the Palestinians? Don't they want to see liberal democracy in the Middle East, in a place like Iran? Why are they utterly silent right now? Okay, 2 more stories. This is from Open Source Intel, and this is an important one to keep in mind. Message relayed from Iran via Starlink describes a society saturated by loss. According to the account, nearly every conversation leads back to a death. People speak of relatives, coworkers, or neighbors who have been killed, with funerals now a routine part of daily life. News of fatalities dominates public discourse, and the scale is described as overwhelming. So there you see a picture of some of this. And this was posted this morning at 6:13 a.m. Okay, now here's a doozy. This is our final story. I could not believe this when I saw this. Open source intel, and there is our favorite person, Candace Owens. I'm speaking facetiously, of course. 38-second clip. This is what she is actually saying. She has gone totally off the deep end. Candace Owens outright denies reports of unrest in Iran, claiming no protests or deaths are occurring, and labeling the entire uprising as a Jewish psyop orchestrated by Benjamin Netanyahu. So Candace Owens is basically saying all of this reporting of revolts in Iran, people dying, it's all just some kind of what? CGI psyop generated by Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government. Yeah, she's lost her marbles. And I think more and more people are recognizing that there is something mentally and psychologically wrong with Candace Owens. And yet she may have contributed to that gentleman, Spencer Pittman, committing the act of arson against the synagogue in Jackson, Mississippi. And that really is quite sad. Yeah, we've just covered a lot of news, and indeed, it's just going to get more and more interesting and more concerning as we see what's happening in the coming days. But hopefully, we've caught up on enough from our time away at the IAMCS Rabbis Conference, and we continue to pray for peace, but also pray for reason and sanity to prevail. Stephen Spencer Pittman. I'm sorry, I want to get his name right. Spencer is his middle name. Okay, now tomorrow, as I announced earlier, we are going to be discussing Thursday and then Friday, the Synagogue of Satan, and that was something prompted, wasn't originally planned, but it was prompted by what took place in Jackson, Mississippi. But because we're on a short week anyway, we'll address Revelation 2, and then we'll address Revelation 3 and discuss also how it's been approached in the Messianic community. I think you'll be surprised by a few things in this analysis. We're going to go into what different Revelation commentators and examiners have said. So be prepared to, be challenged, but also be given some appropriate answers when people throw this at you in our day of increasing anti-Semitism and lack of reason more than anything else. As always, on behalf of Messianic Apologetics, I would like to thank you all for your ongoing prayers, encouragement, and support for all of our ministry efforts. If you have not already, please do visit my website, MessianicApologetics.net. And if that is too long for you to remember, as I said, we also have parked the domain MessianicFaith.faith. So you can access Messianic.faith, and it'll take you right to Messianic Apologetics, where you can access a wide array of free articles, frequently asked questions entries, different back issues of Outreach Israel News. You can take a look at some back episodes of Messianic Insider, different McKee moment shorts, and generally our different ministry adventures from over the years. So just to clarify, Messianic.faith will take you to MessianicApologetics.net. But for a lot of you, especially those of you who want to let your friends, people you know about us, Messianic.faith is a much easier option to use. And please, if you have not already, be sure to give this episode, this live stream, a thumbs up or a heart. It'll help our exposure on social media. We will see you tomorrow with another episode of Messianic Insider. Until then, may God bless you. Shalom, and take care.